The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the dark void between three solar systems. It was huge beyond imagination, with metal walls that stretched for miles in every direction. Thousands of ships came and went every day, bringing traders and travelers from across the galaxy. The station had everything anyone could want: shops, restaurants, entertainment, and most importantly, the Grand Combat Arena. Kang Day felt his damaged cargo ship shake as it approached the docking bay. His left arm was wrapped in dirty bandages, and his right leg hurt with every step he took. 3 days ago, space pirates had attacked his ship while he was carrying medical supplies to a remote colony. He had fought them off, but barely escaped with his life. Now his ship was falling apart and he had no money to fix it. The docking bay was filled with ships of all sizes and shapes. There were sleek Kalani vessels that looked like giant insects and massive Vorthak ships built like floating fortresses. His own ship looked tiny and broken compared to them. As he limped down the exit ramp, several alien workers stopped what they were doing to stare at him. A Vorthak dock worker with green scales covering his body laughed at the sight of the injured. Human. The creature stood almost 8 feet tall with muscles that could crush steel. Next to him, a Kalani with 4 arms and compound eyes clicked its mandibles in what sounded like amusement. They spoke in their own languages, but Kang Day could tell. They were making fun of him. He ignored them and walked slowly through the station corridors. Every step sent pain shooting up his leg, but he kept moving. The walls were covered with bright advertisements in dozens of alien languages. Most of them were trying to sell food, weapons, or entertainment. One advertisement kept appearing over and over again. It showed warriors fighting in a large arena while crowds cheered around them. The Grand Combat Arena was the most popular attraction on Nexus Prime. Warriors from every species in the galaxy came here to test their strength against each other. The winners received large amounts of credits, while the losers often left with serious injuries. Kang Day had heard stories about the arena, but had never thought about entering it himself. He found a small cafe that served food to different species, and sat down at a corner table. The owner was a short alien with purple skin and 6 tentacles instead of arms. She looked at his bandages with what might have been concern. "How much does it cost to repair a cargo ship?" the human asked. The alien woman made some calculations on her tablet. "For a ship like yours, probably 50,000 credits. Maybe more if the damage is really bad." Kang Day felt his heart sink. He only had 300 credits left in his account. Even if he sold everything he owned, it would not be enough. He was stuck on this station with no way to leave and no way to make the money he needed. That is when he noticed the advertisement for the arena again. This time, he paid attention to the words at the bottom. "Open challenge system. Any being can fight for prize money. Winners receive up to 100,000 credits based on their opponent." He stood up and walked toward the arena section of the station. The corridors became wider and more decorated as he got closer. There were holographic displays showing famous fights from the past. Most of the warriors looked incredibly strong and dangerous. He saw Vorthak champions with claws like swords and Kalani fighters with armor plating covering their entire bodies. The registration office was a small room near the arena entrance. Behind a desk sat a bored-looking Kalani clerk with 2 of his 4 arms typing on a computer. When Kang Day entered, the creature looked up with obvious surprise. "I want to register for a fight," the human said. The clerk stared at him for several long moments. "You want to fight in the arena?" "Yes." The Kalani clicked his mandibles, which was their version of laughing. He called out to other workers in the nearby offices. Within minutes, a small crowd had gathered to look at the injured human who wanted to fight their champions. "Are you sure about this?" the clerk asked. "Our current champion has defeated 47 opponents in a row. He has never lost a fight. How much does the winner get?" Kang Day asked. "If you somehow defeat our champion, you get 100,000 credits. But first you have to survive the fight." I will take it. The clerk shrugged and started filling out forms on his computer. He asked for basic information like name, species, and home planet. When he got to the section about medical conditions, he looked at the bandages covering the human. You will need to sign papers saying the arena is not responsible if you get hurt or killed. Many fighters do not survive their matches. I understand. The registration process took almost an hour. During that time, more aliens gathered to watch. Word was spreading through the station that an injured human had signed up to fight in the arena. Most of them seemed to think it was the funniest thing they had ever heard. A large Vorthak merchant named Vel pushed through the crowd to get a better look at Kang Day. The creature was covered in brown scales and wore expensive jewelry around his thick neck. He laughed so hard that his whole body shook. This soft human thinks he can fight our champion. I will bet everything I own against him. This will be the easiest money I have ever made. Other aliens started making bets right there in the registration office. The odds were 50-1 against the human. Even the arena workers were placing bets on how quickly he would lose. Your fight is scheduled for tomorrow at sunset, the clerk told Kang Day. You can spend the night in the fighter quarters if you want. There is a medical bay there if you need treatment for your injuries. Kang Day took the key to his room and walked away from the laughing crowd. As he moved through the corridors, he could hear aliens talking about the upcoming fight. They were all convinced it would be over in seconds. Some were even worried that the fight would be too short to be entertaining. He found the fighter quarters, in a quiet section near the arena. The rooms were small but clean, with a bed, a bathroom, and basic furniture. As he sat on the bed and looked at his reflection in the mirror, he wondered if he was making a terrible mistake. But he had no choice. This was his only chance to get the money he needed to repair his ship. Tomorrow he would step into the arena and face a champion who had never been defeated. The entire station would be watching and waiting for him to fail. Kang Day closed his eyes and tried to rest. Tomorrow would be the most important day of his life. The next morning, Kang Day woke up to the sound of heavy footsteps in the corridor outside his room. Through the thin walls, he could hear deep voices speaking in the Vorthak language. The words sounded harsh and threatening, even though he could not understand what they meant. He got dressed slowly, being careful not to move his injured arm too quickly. When he opened his door, he saw 3 massive Vorthak warriors walking toward the main arena area. Each one was over 8 feet tall, with thick scales covering their bodies like natural armor. Their claws were as long as human fingers and looked sharp enough to cut through metal. These were not just fighters, but killing machines built for war. Kang Day followed them at a distance, trying to learn more about what he would be facing. The corridors leading to the arena were filled with aliens from dozens of different species. Most of them were heading in the same direction, talking excitedly about the upcoming fight. He heard his own name mentioned several times, always followed by laughter. The arena itself was enormous, with seats rising up in circles around a central fighting area. The floor was made of some kind of dark metal that had been stained by countless battles. Above the arena, huge screens showed replays of famous fights from the past. Most of them ended with one fighter lying motionless on the ground. In the center of all this chaos stood the current champion. His name was Zextar, and he was the largest Vorthak that Kang Day had ever seen. The creature was almost 10 feet tall, with muscles that bulged beneath his dark green scales. His claws were longer than most and had been sharpened to deadly points. Around his neck he wore a collar made of the bones of his defeated opponents. Zextar was practicing his fighting moves for the crowd that had gathered to watch. He picked up a metal bar that was as thick as a human arm and crushed it in his bare hands. The sound of bending metal echoed through the arena as pieces fell to the floor. The crowd cheered and roared their approval. Next, the champion grabbed a large stone block that would have taken 3 humans to lift. He raised it above his head with one hand and threw it across the arena, where it smashed into the wall, leaving a deep crater. More cheers erupted from the watching aliens, who were getting more excited by the minute. But Zextar was not finished with his demonstration. He let out a roar that was so loud it shook the entire arena. The sound was like nothing Kang Day had ever heard before. It was the cry of a predator that had never known defeat. Several smaller aliens in the crowd actually ran away in fear. An old human man appeared beside Kang Day as he watched the champion's display. The man was short and thin with gray hair and wrinkled skin. He wore the simple clothes of a maintenance worker and carried a toolbox in his weathered hands. "My name is Jiho," he said quietly. "I have been working on this station for 30 years. I have seen many fights in this arena." Kang Day looked at the old man with interest. "Have you seen humans fight here before?" "Yes, I have. Most of them lost badly. Our people are not built like these warriors. We do not have their strength or their natural weapons. But a few humans have surprised everyone with their victories." "What made the difference?" Kang Day asked. "The ones who won did not try to fight like Vorthax or Kelani. They fought like humans. They used their minds more than their muscles. They found ways to win that their opponents never expected." Jiho pointed toward Zextar, who was now demonstrating his claws on a practice dummy. "Look at him carefully. He is strong and fast, but he has been champion for 6 months. He has fought the same way in every battle. His opponents always try to match his strength and they always lose." "What are you saying?" "I am saying that maybe it is time someone fought differently." Before Kang Day could ask more questions, Jiho walked away and disappeared into the crowd. The human was left alone to watch as more aliens arrived to see the upcoming fight. The betting booths around the arena were doing incredible business as everyone placed money on Zextar to win. A Kalani announcer with a voice that could be heard throughout the station began describing the champion's record: 47 victories and 0 defeats. He has killed 12 opponents and seriously injured 35 more. His average fight time is less than 2 minutes. The crowd cheered even louder when they heard these statistics. Kang Day felt his stomach tighten as he realized what he was about to face. This was not just a strong fighter, but a professional killer who enjoyed causing pain. He made his way to the medical bay where he found So Min, the human doctor, who worked on the station. She was a woman in her 30s with kind eyes and steady hands. Her medical equipment was clean and well organized, showing that she took her job seriously. "You cannot be serious about this fight," she said when she saw him. "You are already injured, and now you want to face the most dangerous fighter in the galaxy." "I need the prize money to repair my ship," Kang Day replied. "This is my only chance. There are other ways to earn money. You could work on the station or ask for loans from other humans. I will not beg for help. I can take care of myself." So Min shook her head in frustration, but began checking his injuries anyway. "Your arm is healing well, but your leg is still weak. One strong hit from Zextar could break bones that will never heal properly. I understand the risks." "Do you really? That creature out there has killed beings who were twice as strong as any human. He does not just defeat his opponents, he destroys them completely." While she worked on his bandages, Kang Day could hear the crowd getting louder and more excited. Vendors were selling food and drinks while bookmakers took more bets against him. The entire station was preparing for what they expected to be a very short and very bloody entertainment. Young Mi, a human trader who worked in the commercial district, came to visit him before the fight. She was a smart businesswoman who had built a successful trading company despite the challenges of working in alien space. She carried herself with confidence, but Kang Day could see worry in her eyes. "I placed a small bet on you," she said quietly. "Not because I think you can win, but because I want to support a fellow human." "Thank you for the gesture. Listen to me carefully. I have watched many fights in this arena. The aliens who win are usually the ones who can adapt quickly to their opponents. Style. Zextar always starts his fights the same way. He charges forward and tries to end things quickly with his claws. What happens if his opponent survives the first attack? No one has ever survived his first attack. Kang Day spent the rest of the day resting and thinking about what he had learned. Outside his room, he could hear the sounds of the station preparing for the fight. Workers were setting up additional seating, and security was increasing around the arena. This was clearly going to be the biggest event on Nexus Prime in months. As the sun began to set through the station's viewing ports, Kang Day knew it was almost time. Soon, he would step into that arena and face a champion who had never been defeated. The odds were against him, and everyone expected him to lose quickly. But something inside him refused to give up. He had survived pirate attacks and dangerous cargo runs across hostile space. He had learned to think fast and move carefully in situations where one mistake meant death. Maybe that would be enough. The arena was packed with thousands of alien spectators when evening arrived. Every seat was filled, and more beings were standing in the aisles, hoping to get a glimpse of what they expected to be a very short fight. The noise was incredible as creatures from dozens of species cheered and placed last-minute bets on the outcome. Kang Day sat in a small preparation room beneath the arena floor listening to the crowd above. The sound reminded him of an angry storm with thunder that never stopped. Through the thin ceiling, he could hear aliens laughing and making jokes about the foolish human who thought he could defeat their champion. A Kalani guard with 4 arms and bright yellow skin came to escort him to the arena entrance. The creature looked at him with what might have been pity in its compound eyes. Most fighters spend their final minutes praying to their gods or screaming in fear. You just sit there quietly like you are waiting for a shuttle. I am not most fighters, Kang Day replied. No, you are just a dead fighter who does not know it yet. The guard led him through a series of tunnels that connected to the main arena. Along the way, they passed other preparation rooms where he could see evidence of previous fights. There were claw marks in the walls and dark stains on the floor that looked like dried blood. Some of the rooms had medical equipment suggesting that many fighters needed serious treatment after their matches. When they reached the arena entrance, Kang Day could hear the announcer speaking to the crowd in multiple languages. The creature was describing Zextar's incredible record and explaining why this fight would be special. Not special because it would be difficult, but special because it would show the difference between a real warrior and a desperate fool. Ladies and gentlemen, beings of all species, the announcer called out, tonight you will witness the 48th victory of our undefeated champion. His opponent is a human cargo hauler who believes he can somehow defeat the greatest fighter in the galaxy. The crowd erupted in laughter that was so loud it hurt Kang Day's ears. He could hear individual voices making cruel comments about human weakness and stupidity. Some aliens were already celebrating their easy winnings from the bets they had placed. On the other side of the arena, Zextar was preparing for his entrance. The massive Vorthak was performing a ritual dance that his species used before battle. He moved with surprising grace for such a large creature, spinning and jumping while his claws caught the light from the arena's bright lamps. The champion's supporters were cheering his every move. They waved banners with his name written in Vorthak, script and chanted war songs that had been passed down through generations of their warrior culture. To them, this was not just entertainment, but a celebration of their species' natural superiority. Captain Rex, the head of arena security, watched the preparations from his control booth high above the fighting floor. He was an old Kalani who had seen hundreds of matches over the years. Most fights followed predictable patterns, with the stronger fighter winning through brute force. But something about this human bothered him, though he could not explain what it was. The human shows no fear, Rex told his assistant. Most challengers are either terrified or trying to act brave. This one just looks calm, like he is thinking about something completely different. Maybe he is too stupid to understand the danger, his assistant replied. Maybe. Or maybe he knows something. We do not. Down in the medical bay, So Min was preparing for what she expected to be a very busy night. She had extra supplies ready and her equipment was charged and calibrated. In her experience, fights with Zextar usually ended with at least one fighter needing serious medical attention and often emergency surgery. She found herself hoping that Kang Day would at least survive the encounter. Too many humans had died in various accidents and conflicts throughout the galaxy. They could not afford to lose more people to alien entertainment. The betting continued right up until the moment the fight began. Vel the Vorthak merchant, who had laughed at Kang Day during registration, was now placing enormous bets on Zextar. He had convinced other merchants to join him, creating a betting pool worth millions of credits. "This will be the easiest money any of us have ever made," Vel told his friends. "That pathetic human will be unconscious before he can even raise his hands to defend himself." Other aliens were making similar wagers throughout the station. The odds had actually gotten worse for Kang Day as more beings learned about his injuries and lack of fighting experience. Some bookmakers were offering 100-to-1 odds against the human surviving more than 30 seconds. Young Mai sat in the stands, surrounded by aliens who were all betting against her species. She had placed a small wager on Kang Day, not because she believed he could win, but because she wanted to show support for a fellow human. Around her, Vorthax and Kelani were already planning how to spend their winnings. The pre-fight ceremonies began with traditional music from both fighters' home worlds. For Zexatar, this meant deep drums and horns that sounded like battle calls. For Kang Day, it meant a simple melody played on string instruments that reminded him of Earth, though he had never actually been to humanity's home planet. When the music ended, both fighters were called to opposite sides of the arena. Zextar entered first to thunderous cheers from the crowd. He raised his clawed hands above his head and roared a challenge that echoed throughout the station. His scales gleamed under the bright lights, and his muscles rippled as he moved. Champion began his intimidation display by attacking a practice dummy that had been placed in the center of the arena. His claws tore through the reinforced material like it was made of paper. Within seconds, the dummy was reduced to shreds that scattered across the fighting floor. Next, he picked up a metal bar and bent it into a pretzel shape before throwing the twisted metal into the crowd, where eager fans fought to catch it as a souvenir. Every move he made was designed to show his incredible strength and strike fear into his opponent's heart. When Kang Day finally entered the arena, the contrast could not have been greater. He walked slowly due to his injured leg and kept his bandaged arm close to his side. Compared to the massive Vorthak champion, he looked like a child who had wandered into the wrong place. The crowd's laughter was deafening. Beings pointed at the limping human and made jokes in languages he did not understand. Some aliens were laughing so hard they had tears in their eyes. Others were shaking their heads in disbelief that anyone could be foolish enough to challenge Zexatar while injured. "Look at this soft meat," the champion called out in broken standard language. "He can barely walk and he thinks he can fight me. I will crush him like an insect." The crowd cheered even louder at these words. Many aliens began chanting Zextar's name, while others made crushing motions with their hands to show what they expected to happen to the human. Kang Day ignored the taunts and the laughter. He walked to his starting position and stood quietly while the referee explained the rules. Fights continued until one participant was unconscious, unable to continue, or submitted by tapping the floor 3 times. There were no weapons allowed, except natural claws, teeth, or other body parts. As the 2 fighters took their positions, the arena fell silent for the first time that evening. Thousands of aliens leaned forward in their seats, waiting to see how quickly their champion would end this ridiculous challenge. The betting screens showed final odds of 75-to-1 against the human. The referee raised his hand to signal the start of combat. In a few seconds, everyone would see just how big the gap was between human weakness and Vorthak strength. The fight was about to begin. The referee's hand dropped, and the fight began. Zextar charged forward with the confidence of a champion who had never tasted defeat. His massive feet pounded against the metal floor of the arena, creating thunderous sounds that echoed through the packed stadium. His claws were extended and ready to tear through the human who had dared to challenge him. The crowd was on its feet, cheering for their champion. Thousands of aliens expected to see the human crushed in the first few seconds. Many had placed bets on how quickly Zextar would win, and they were all confident in their wagers. But something unexpected happened. Kang Day was not there when the champion's claws sliced through the air where his head had been just moments before. The human had moved to the side with a speed that surprised everyone watching. Despite his injured leg, he had managed to avoid the attack that should have ended the fight immediately. Zextar's momentum carried him forward several more steps before he could stop and turn around. His eyes showed confusion as he looked for his opponent. No fighter had ever avoided his opening attack before. Most of them were too terrified or too slow to get out of the way. The crowd fell silent as they tried to understand what they had just witnessed. The human was supposed to be on the ground bleeding or unconscious. Instead, he was standing calmly, a few feet away from the champion, looking completely unharmed. Kang Day did not waste time celebrating his successful dodge. While Zextar was still turning around, the human was already moving again. But he was not running away or trying to attack. He was studying his opponent's movements and looking for weaknesses. During his 3 days fighting space pirates, Kang Day had learned valuable lessons about survival. Pirates were bigger and stronger than humans, just like Zextar. They had better weapons and more experience in combat. But they also had weaknesses that could be exploited by someone who was smart enough to find them. The champion recovered from his confusion and attacked again. This time he was more careful and tried to corner the human against the arena wall. His claws swept through the air in wide arcs, designed to catch his opponent no matter which direction he moved. But again, Kang Day was not where the champion expected him to be. The human dropped low and rolled under the sweeping claws before, coming up on Zextar's blind side. The move was so smooth that it looked like he had practiced it thousands of times. The crowd was no longer laughing. Confused murmurs spread through the stands as beings tried to understand how this injured human was avoiding their champion's attacks. Some aliens stood up to get a better view while others checked the screens to make sure they were seeing correctly. Zextar was getting frustrated. His fighting style had always been simple and effective. He used his size and strength to overwhelm opponents before they could mount any defense. But this human was making him look clumsy and slow. The champion tried a different approach. He stopped chasing the human and instead stood in the center of the arena with his arms spread wide. This was a challenge pose that meant he was ready for his opponent to come to him. "You cannot run forever, little human," he growled. "Eventually, you will have to fight me, and when you do, I will tear you apart." The crowd cheered these words, hoping their champion would regain control of the fight. But Kang Day did not seem intimidated by the threat. He continued to circle the larger fighter while studying every detail of his stance and movement. What the aliens in the crowd did not know was that Kang Day had spent years working in dangerous parts of space. He had dealt with hostile aliens, angry customers, and desperate criminals. He had learned to read body language and spot weakness in beings who were much larger and stronger than himself. Captain Rex watched the fight from his security booth with growing interest. This was not going the way anyone had expected. The human was not trying to match the champion's strength or fight like a typical challenger. He was using a completely different strategy. "The human is studying him," Rex told his assistant. "Look at his eyes. He is not watching the claws or the teeth. He is looking for something else. What could he possibly see that would help him? I do not know, but he clearly sees something we do not." Down in the medical bay, So-Min was watching the fight on a screen while keeping her equipment ready. She had expected Kang Day to be carried in within the first minute, but instead he was still moving around the arena, avoiding every attack. In the stands, young Mi found herself holding her breath as she watched her fellow human dance around the massive champion. The aliens sitting near her had stopped laughing and were now watching the fight with serious attention. Zextar decided to end this embarrassing display. He let out another roar and charged forward with even more speed than before. His claws were aimed directly at the human's chest, and there seemed to be no way to avoid them. But Kang Day had been waiting for exactly this moment. As the champion rushed toward him, the human did something that no one in the arena expected. Instead of dodging to the side or backing away, he stepped forward and slightly to the left. The movement was so small that many aliens in the crowd missed it entirely. But it put Kang Day in the perfect position to do what he had been planning since the fight began. As Zextar's massive body rushed past him, Kang Day reached out with his uninjured arm. His hand moved with the precision of someone who had studied anatomy and knew exactly where to strike. He hit a specific spot on the champion's neck just below the base of his skull. It was not a powerful blow. A human fist could never match the force of Vorthak claws or the crushing strength of their jaws. But it did not need to be powerful. It only needed to be accurate. The spot Kang Day had targeted was a nerve cluster that existed in most humanoid species, including Vorthaks. It was normally protected by thick scales and muscle, but there was one small area where a precise strike could reach the vulnerable nerves beneath. Kang Day had learned about this weakness during his medical training years ago. It was the kind of information that cargo haulers needed to know when dealing with hostile aliens in remote parts of space. Most people forgot such details, but Kang Day had always been good at remembering useful information. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Zextar's massive body went limp as his nervous system was temporarily disrupted by the precise strike. His legs gave out beneath him, and he crashed to the arena floor with a sound like thunder. The champion did not move. His eyes were closed and his breathing was slow and steady, but he was completely unconscious. The being who had defeated 47 opponents in a row had been brought down by a single, carefully placed strike from an injured human. For several long moments, the entire arena was completely silent. Thousands of aliens stared in shock at the impossible scene before them. Their undefeated champion was lying motionless on the floor, while the human they had mocked stood calmly beside him. Kang Day knelt down and checked Zextar's pulse to make sure he was still alive. The champion would recover completely in a few minutes, but for now he was unconscious and unable to continue fighting. The referee was so surprised that he forgot to make the official announcement. He just stood there staring at the fallen champion, while trying to process what he had witnessed. Finally, Kang Day looked up at the shocked crowd and spoke in a voice that could be heard throughout the arena. "The fight is over." The arena exploded into chaos as thousands of alien spectators tried to understand what they had just witnessed. Many stood up from their seats shouting in languages from across the galaxy, while others sat in stunned silence, staring at the unconscious champion on the arena floor. The referee finally remembered his duties and raised Kang Day's uninjured arm to signal his victory. The human had officially defeated the undefeated champion in what might have been the biggest upset in arena history. But the crowd's reaction was not the usual cheering that followed a good fight. Instead, angry voices began to rise from different sections of the stadium. Many aliens were shouting that the fight had been fixed or that the human must have used some kind of illegal weapon. Others demanded that medical scanners be brought in to check for hidden technology or performance-enhancing drugs. The Vorthak merchant who had bet heavily against Kang Day was pushing his way down toward the arena floor. His brown scales were dark with rage, and his jewelry jangled as he moved through the crowd. He had just lost more money than most beings earned in their entire lifetimes. "This is impossible," he roared when he reached the barrier around the fighting area. No soft human can defeat a Vorthak warrior. He must have cheated somehow. I demand a full investigation before any prize money is paid out. Other aliens who had lost money began joining their voices to Vel's protests. Soon there was an angry mob of beings demanding that the fight be declared invalid. Security guards moved in to keep the crowd from rushing onto the arena floor where Kang Day was still kneeling beside the unconscious champion. Captain Rex came down from his control booth to restore order. The old Kalani had seen many controversial fights over the years, but nothing quite like this. He activated the arena's recording system and began reviewing the footage of the battle on a large screen, visible to the entire crowd. The replay showed the fight from multiple angles in slow motion. Every movement was clearly visible, including the moment when Kang Day struck the precise spot on Zextar's neck. There were no hidden weapons, no illegal technology, and no sign of any rule violations. The human fought fairly and won according to arena regulations, Captain Rex announced over the sound system. The victory stands, and the prize money will be awarded as promised. But this only made the angry crowd louder. Many aliens had never seen a human win anything against their supposedly superior species. Some were questioning everything they believed about the natural order of the galaxy. While the argument continued above him, Kang Day was focused on making sure Zextar was recovering properly. The champion's eyes were starting to flutter, and his breathing was returning to normal. The nerve strike had been precise enough to knock him out without causing permanent damage. Zextar opened his eyes and looked up at the human kneeling beside him. For a moment, confusion clouded his features as he tried to remember what had happened. Then the memory of his defeat came flooding back, and his expression changed to one of shock and shame. "How did you do that?" he asked quietly. "I have fought hundreds of opponents, and none of them ever found that weakness." "I spent 3 days fighting space pirates before I came here," Kang Day replied. "They taught me that every being has vulnerable spots if you know where to look for them." The champion struggled to sit up with Kang Day, helping to support him. Around them, the crowd was still arguing about the legitimacy of the fight, while security guards worked to maintain order. "I do not understand," Zextar said. "You are injured, and much smaller than me. How did you move fast enough to avoid my attacks? Being injured taught me to be more careful about every movement. I could not waste energy on unnecessary actions, so I had to make each one count." Somin, the human doctor, arrived with a medical team to check on both fighters. She quickly determined that Zextar would recover completely, while Kang Day had somehow managed to avoid any new injuries during the fight. "You actually did it," she said to Kang Day while scanning him with her medical equipment. "I thought you were going to get yourself killed, but instead you won." Other humans from around the station began arriving to congratulate their fellow human on his incredible victory. Ji-Ho, the old maintenance worker, pushed through the crowd with tears in his eyes. "I knew you had a chance," he told Kang Day. 40 years ago, I was a soldier, and I learned the same lessons you did. Sometimes the smallest person in a fight is the most dangerous one." Young Mi appeared next with a huge smile on her face. She was carrying a data pad that showed her betting account with numbers that made her eyes shine with excitement. "That small wager I placed on you just made me rich," she laughed. "The odds were so bad against you that even my tiny bet is worth a fortune now." But not everyone was happy about the outcome. The arguing in the stands was getting worse as aliens who had lost money demanded investigations, appeals, and reviews of the fight. Some were even threatening to take their complaints to the station's governing council. Captain Rex realized he needed to take control of the situation before it turned into a riot. He activated his communicator and called for additional security teams, while also requesting medical staff to help with any beings who might be injured in the growing chaos. The arena promoter Tel Win was dealing with his own crisis as hundreds of angry customers surrounded the betting booths demanding their money back. The Kalani had never seen such a dramatic upset and was not sure how to handle the financial implications. "We cannot return money that was lost on legitimate bets," he announced through his translator device. The fight was fair, and the human won, according to all rules and regulations. This announcement only made the situation worse. Several large aliens began pushing against the security barriers while others threw objects toward the arena floor. The celebration that should have followed an exciting fight was turning into an angry mob scene. Zextar slowly got to his feet with Kang Day's help. The former champion looked around at the chaos his defeat had caused and shook his massive head in disbelief. "In all my fights, I have never seen a crowd react like this," he said. "Usually they cheer for the winner and forget about the loser quickly. They are not upset about you losing, Kang Day replied. They are upset that a human won. The champion considered this for a moment, then nodded slowly. You are right. They cannot accept that their beliefs about your species might be wrong. As the security situation continued to deteriorate, Captain Rex made the decision to evacuate both fighters from the arena through a back entrance. He escorted Kang Day and Zextar along with the human medical team through a series of maintenance tunnels that led away from the main stadium area. The prize money has already been transferred to your account, Rex told Kang Day as they walked. 100,000 credits as promised. You have enough to repair your ship and probably buy a new one if you want. Thank you, Kang Day said simply. Do not thank me yet. Word of this fight is going to spread throughout the galaxy very quickly. You may find that being the human who defeated Zextar brings both opportunities and problems you did not expect. They emerged from the tunnels in a quiet section of the station far from the arena and the angry crowds. For the first time since entering the fight, Kang Day allowed himself to believe that he had actually survived and won. But Captain Rex was right about one thing. This victory was going to change everything. Within hours of the fight, news of Kang Day's victory began spreading across the galaxy through communication networks and trade routes. The story grew with each telling as beings shared details about the injured human who had defeated the supposedly unbeatable Vorthak champion. On distant trading stations and colony worlds, aliens gathered around communication screens to watch recordings of the fight. Many refused to believe what they were seeing and demanded proof that the footage had not been altered. Others watched the replay dozens of times, trying to understand how such an impossible victory had occurred. Kang Day spent the night in the station's human quarter trying to process everything that had happened. The prize money was safely in his account and repair crews were already working on his damaged cargo ship. By tomorrow, he would be able to leave Nexus Prime and return to his normal life, hauling freight across the galaxy. But he was beginning to realize that his life would never be normal again. Early the next morning, Telwyn, the arena promoter, came to visit him. The Kalani's 4 arms were full of contracts and data pads as he tried to convince the human to sign up for more fights. You could become the richest fighter in the galaxy, Telwyn said excitedly. Beings from dozens of worlds are already placing bets on your next match. I can offer you 500,000 credits for your next fight and 1 million for the one after that. Kang Day shook his head firmly. I only fought to get money for ship repairs. Now I have that money, so I am done fighting. But you do not understand the opportunity here. You are the first human to defeat a major arena champion. You could represent your entire species in the greatest fights the galaxy has ever seen. I am not interested in fame or representing anyone. I just want to repair my ship and get back to work. Telwyn left disappointed, but Kang Day knew the offers would keep coming. Word was spreading that the human was refusing to fight again, which only made him more mysterious and desirable to promoters and fans across the galaxy. Zextar came to visit him later that morning. The former champion had recovered completely from his defeat, but seemed different somehow. The arrogant confidence that had defined him was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like curiosity. I have been thinking about our fight all night, the Vorthak said. I want to understand how you moved the way you did. Can you teach me some of these human fighting techniques? Kang Day was surprised by the request. Most beings who lost fights wanted revenge, not training from their opponents. There are no special human fighting techniques, he explained. I just used basic knowledge about anatomy and movement that any species could learn. The key is not trying to be stronger than your opponent, but finding ways to use their strength against them. This is a very different way of thinking about combat. My people believe that the strongest fighter should always win. Sometimes the strongest fighter does win, but sometimes the smartest fighter wins instead. Their conversation was interrupted by Captain Rex, who brought news from around the station. The security chief looked tired, as if he had not slept at all since the fight ended. The situation is getting complicated, he told them. We have received communication from Vorthak military leaders demanding an investigation into how their champion was defeated. They believe some kind of human military technology must have been involved. That is ridiculous, Kang Day replied. The fight was recorded from every angle. Anyone can see that I used no weapons or technology. Logic does not always matter when pride is involved. Some Vorthak leaders are having trouble accepting that a human could defeat one of their warriors in fair combat. Similar reactions were occurring throughout alien space as the news continued to spread. On the Kalani homeworlds, military analysts were studying recordings of the fight to understand human combat capabilities. Some were recommending changes to their own training programs based on what they had observed. The human approach to fighting is completely different from anything we have seen before, one analyst reported to his superiors. They do not rely on natural advantages like strength or claws. Instead, they use knowledge and precision to find weaknesses that other species overlook. Meanwhile, So-Min was dealing with her own challenges in the medical bay. Other humans throughout the galaxy had heard about Kang Day's victory, and many were now requesting transfers to Nexus Prime, hoping to meet the famous fighter. Everyone wants to know the secret she told young Mai during one of her visits. They think there must be some special human ability that allowed him to win. The secret is that there is no secret, Young Mi replied. He just did what humans have always done. He adapted to a difficult situation and found a way to survive. But this simple truth was hard for many aliens to accept. For generations, they had believed that physical strength and natural weapons determined the outcome of combat. The idea that intelligence and strategy could overcome these advantages challenged their basic understanding of how the universe worked. Ji-Ho, the old maintenance worker, found himself becoming something of a celebrity among the station's human population. Other humans sought him out to hear his stories about the early days when humans first began exploring alien space. We were always the smallest and weakest species out here, he told a group of young human workers. But we learned to survive by being smarter and more adaptable than anyone expected. What Kang Day did in that arena is what humans have been doing for centuries. Word of the fight even reached Earth, where human leaders were trying to decide how to respond. Some wanted to use Kang Day's victory as propaganda to show human strength, while others worried that it might create unrealistic expectations for other humans in alien space. As the days passed, the effects of the fight continued to ripple outward. On some worlds, aliens began treating humans with more respect, while on others they became more suspicious and hostile. The victory had proven that humans could not be dismissed as easily as many aliens had believed. Vel, the Vorthak merchant, who had lost so much money betting against Kang Day, eventually came to apologize for his behavior after the fight. The experience had taught him not to underestimate beings based on their appearance. I have been trading with different species for 20 years, he told Kang Day. I thought I understood the capabilities of each race, but your victory showed me how wrong I was. From now on, I will judge individuals by their actions, not their species. This was exactly the kind of change that would have the greatest long-term impact. Individual aliens throughout the galaxy were reconsidering their assumptions about humans, based on what one injured cargo hauler had accomplished in a single fight. When Kang Day's ship was finally repaired, he prepared to leave Nexus Prime quietly. He had no desire for fame or attention and hoped to return to his normal life, hauling cargo between distant worlds. But as he walked through the station to reach his ship, he noticed how differently other beings looked at him now. Some stared with curiosity or respect, while others seemed nervous or suspicious. A few aliens actually stepped out of his way as he passed, as if they were afraid of what the dangerous human might do. Young Mai came to see him off along with So-Min, Ji-Ho, and several other humans from the station. You realize this is not going to end here, So-Min told him. People throughout the galaxy will remember what you did for a very long time. I just hope they remember the right lessons, Kang Day replied. What do you mean? I hope they remember that it is possible for different species to coexist and learn from each other. that physical differences do not determine who is superior or inferior, and that sometimes the most unlikely person can surprise everyone, including themselves. As his ship lifted off from Nexus Prime and headed back into deep space, Kang Day looked back at the station through his viewport. He had arrived as just another human cargo hauler with a broken ship and desperate need for money. He was leaving as the being who had changed how an entire galaxy thought about humanity. The injured human who had been mocked for entering the arena had proven that humans deserved respect, not because of their strength, but because of their intelligence, courage, and refusal to accept defeat. And throughout the galaxy, other humans were walking a little taller, knowing that when the universe had counted them out, one of their own had proven that humans never stay down for long.